Hello and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History and the 26th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration Education Day. Our presenter, Senora Lynch, will begin in just a moment, but we want to begin with a few notes. Remember to ask questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share with our presenter. We have many additional resources about American Indians in North Carolina on our website. We thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation, helping to make this event possible. Now let's get started. Senora Lynch is a member of the Haliwa-Saponi tribe and is well known for her handmade pottery, which is made using the tradition of hand-coiling white and red clay. She etches designs into each piece's surface, creating unique works of art that connect past and present. What are you sharing with us today?
Jag de lag, Shiki Ketnaha, Makor Ametin Kiho, Raquis, Haliwa-Saponi, Senora Lynch. So my name is Senora Lynch, and I am from the Haliwa-Saponi Indian tribe in Hollister, North Carolina. We have about 3,800 tribal members as part of our tribe, and many of our arts and traditions are passed down to our children from generation to generation. We hope to continue our ways through our children, and hopefully that they, in this modern world that we live in, hopefully they will continue and carry on our ways and our traditional teachings. The words that I said this morning come from the Saponi, Tutelo, and Tuscaroras language. It is a dialect that was spoken by my people of the Siouan Nation and also of the Iroquois people that would speak this language. And so my tribe is part of the Tuscaroras, Saponi, Tutelo, Nansemond, and many other tribes that join together to survive in our community that we live in today. The words that I said was Jag Delag, which means hello, how are you doing? I also said Makor Amechin Kiho, which means you're welcome to be here. Those are some of the words that we greet each other within tribes, from tribe to tribe, as they come to our different communities. I grew up in my home area of about in the Haliwa-Saponi community, where the majority of the people that live there are part of my tribe. We have our big powwow every year. We have a big celebration of dancing and singing and celebrating together. It's like a huge homecoming. Many of our people come from all over to join together for that one special event, which takes place in April. We have other events throughout the year, but that's the one we call our big celebration, our big powwow. So many of you may not know what a powwow is. Well, a powwow is a celebration of dancing, singing, music, food, laughter, fires. We have a big fire, and every year we have our powwow. We invite many other nations to it, but now it's been open to the public for quite a few years. So you are more than welcome to come to our powwow, which will take place in April. So feel free to come and enjoy and learn about our people. Now, while I'm talking, I'm going to work on a piece of pottery and talk with you at the same time. And as you see on the table, this is all of my pottery that I make. I am a potter, an artist, a traditionalist. I've learned a lot from my elders, and I try to incorporate those things into my pottery. So my work is called Living Traditions. Living Traditions. So when you think about that word, exactly what it means is when you think about what is living and what is tradition. Well, we know that tradition means something that's passed down from one generation to the next. Living means things that are alive and still existing today. So I started making pottery when I was about 14 years old. I was a young girl in at our Haliwa-Saponi tribal school, and we were teaching our kids how to make pottery. So the women were making pottery, and myself and my husband, we were two of the young people in our community who were really interested in learning and learning from our elders. And we really actually love just sitting around our elder people, just listen to their stories. And if you have any of the elders in your family, your grandparents or parents or anyone who's an elder person, just think about listening to their stories, because they're pretty funny people and they make you laugh and they teach you lots of things about life. If you're having trouble in school or having problems with your teacher or things aren't going quite right, go talk to your grandparents, go talk to your elders, and they can teach you how you should take care of each and every situation. So when we were young, we would go and sit with the older women, and they were actually making pottery. And we were asked to just help carry clay and carry water. And by being helpers to them, we began to make our pottery. My husband says he made pottery way back then, but now he says he's just a gopher. So he carries all the clay, he carries the pots, he does all the firing of the pottery. So he's still my right hand person, my helper. I couldn't make pottery without him. I also have a daughter, and she is an artist as well. You know, when we grew up, we didn't really call this art, it was just a way of life. So we didn't really think about pottery and basketry and stone carvings and things like that. It was not necessarily considered art. It was pretty much just a way of life because these are items that we needed to live our everyday life. But now we're considered artists and we make beautiful artwork from our traditional ways. So I always say I walk in two worlds. I walk in my native world and I walk in my American world. So I've combined the old and the new together. And so what I'm going to be showing you today is how to make a pinch pot. And then I'm going to talk to you about the designs that you see on my pottery. And you see I have lots of different designs on my pots. And as you look across the table, you'll see different animals that you see. And like I said earlier, my work is called Living Traditions. And I base it on the living stories that our people talk about. So you're going to hear me patting in the background, patting my clay. That's called kneading the clay together. So I'm going to pat it and talk with you at the same time. So the two different clays that I use is red clay and white clay. And this is a natural clay that comes out of the ground. When I was a little girl, we used to go outside and just play in the dirt. That's what we did for fun. Today you have computers, you have TV, you have your cell phones. So you have a lot of modern technology that kind of changes your lifestyle from my lifestyle, which is very different today. We would go out into the woods down behind my mother's house. There's a little creek down there. And we would go running down the creek and play in the woods. We would swing on grapevines. We would have fun. We would play with little bugs and beetles. We would climb trees. And so that's what we did for fun. But another thing we did was we would dig up the clay in the yard and make little cups and bowls and saucers and things like that out of clay. But at the time, I was just considering myself playing in the clay. Now I actually make what I would consider more constructive pottery, different shapes and things like that than I did when I was just a child. But I always say the clay is magical. The clay takes me back to my childhood when we would play in the clay. And so, you know, that was my first experience learning about pottery. Then as I got a little older, my grandfather had some old broken pottery shards that were in his workshop. He used to have a shed behind the house. And in his shed, he had some old pottery shards. And he would pick up those shards and show me the different textures on the pottery. And he would tell me, he said, this is the way our people would make pottery hundreds of years ago. And they would have different types of textures on there. So if you look at old pottery from North Carolina, you'll see that most of it doesn't really look exactly like my pottery does today. So the older pots were more like grays and blacks and charcoal colors because the way that we fire our pottery in the ground is called pit firing. And so when we pit fire, it comes out different colors based on the type of wood that you would use. So my pottery is mainly kiln fired today, and that's how I keep the two different colors of clay separated. Now, in the old days, they would actually paint a clay on clay. So they would use one color clay to paint on top of another color clay. And then, but it was very different than the style that you see on the table today. My pottery is much more elaborate, more detailed, a lot of designs. But what connects my art to the past are the elements on my pottery. So the designs that are on my pottery connect me to my ancestors, connects me to old stories, connects me to old sayings. Some people call them superstitions. And we have a lot of beliefs in the animals and the trees, the birds, the bears, the deers, all kind of trees and plants that teach us a lot about life. So my pottery and my designs connect me to those old ways and those traditional stories in life. Now this is red clay, And as I roll it together like this is called kneading the clay. Kneading the clay, working the clay together to get out all of your air pockets. So this is red clay and this is white clay. So the white clay is what I use to paint on top of the red clay. Now, even though I use the word paint, it's not a glaze or a modern day paint like a lot of potters use. It's actually a natural white clay. So the white clay is what I use to paint on top of the red clay. And while I'm talking with you, I'm going to go ahead and start working on this piece of pottery. And you notice I already rolled it into a ball. And when I was a young girl and we would sit with our elders, they began to just tell me how to take the clay, knead it together, get out the air pockets, and then they began to show me how to shape the different pieces of pottery. So this is called a pinch pot. Now, a lot of people make pinch pots different than I do. You can see the little hole there. So what I did was I rolled it into a ball, and then I took one finger and stuck inside, and now I'm just going to keep rolling that finger on the inside. And what I'm doing on the inside is stretching the clay. So as my finger rolls around, I stretch out the clay to shape it into a bowl. Now, our people for many years have made pottery to eat inside, to store food inside as a storage container. It's been used to cook inside the vessels. It's used to have ceremonies, which we have smudging ceremonies. We have wedding ceremonies, which we make special wedding vases just for particular wedding ceremonies. But pottery has used basically to cook inside. And I often like to think, I always think about my elders and the things that they did to survive and live on this land. And so I would like for you to think about um, if Native Americans were scientists. I always like to think that my elders were scientists. When you think about what it takes to be a scientist, to do research, to do studies, to log your information, to collect more knowledge, trial and error. So my elders, they were scientists. They knew how to find the right clay for making pottery. Because just because there's a lot of dirt around the world is not all good for making pottery. So this is red clay, and this is really good clay for making pottery. Another thing my people say is that wherever there's crawdads, you can find good clay to make your pottery. So a crawdad is like a crayfish. We call him a crayfish or a crawdad. And he's just like a little lobster looking little creature, looks like a little fish. And he digs and burrows down into the clay. And when he builds his house, the clay piles up. And so as we walk through the woods and we see those piles of dirt, we know that that's a crawdad, what they call a crawdad hole. And that's where we collect our clay. So you can actually dig up uh, clay based on the animals, based on the dirt, based on the land. So depending on where you live determines where you get your clay. Out west in different places like Arizona, up in the Cherokee Mountains, a lot of them get their clay out of the mountainside and out of the cliffs. And so our clay is usually found near springs and near creeks and places like that. So usually anywhere you see a crawdad, you can find clay. So as you were watching me, if you noticed, I made this into a bowl. So this is called a pinch pot. And the reason why it's called a pinch pot, because it's kind of like making biscuits. When you make biscuits and you roll your dough and prepare your dough, you just pinch off a piece of dough to make a biscuit. So in this case, we just pinch off a piece of clay to make it into a bowl, and that is called a pinch pot. Now, oftentimes, little bowls like this would be used as a cup or a bowl for eating soup out of. Sometimes we also call this a seed pot, which is used to preserve and save our seeds. So seed pots are very important. Preserving and saving our seeds are very important for our future. Oftentimes we go to the grocery stores today and we buy our food and we think about life is so convenient and so easy. But really, our people believed in saving their seeds for 5 generations ahead to make sure our children and our children's children will always have food. And so this type of bowl would be called a seed pot, but it's made in what's called a pinch pot style. Now, a lot of people make their pinch pots a little bit different than I do. Most people take their fingers and they pinch the clay, where I just use my fingers and roll inside the clay. So I will say you have to have some pretty strong finger muscles in order to make a pinch pot. So that's called a pinch pot. It's not actually finished yet because if you notice, it's not very smooth, it's not consistent. So what I'll do is I will come back with some of my tools after it starts to dry. I will come back with some of my scraping tools and I will scrape away all of the uneven areas that I see on the pottery. Now I started when I think about my pots and my designs, I think about a four um, a four direction. So whenever I think about looking at that pot and thinking of the consistency or the balance and the equalness of it, I think about the 4 directions. So you have to look at your pottery in different ways. You have to look at the top, you have to look at the inside, you have to look at the outside, and you have to look at the overall bottom shape. So I always think about it in 4 directions. So this right here is another bowl that's going to be made into a smudge bowl. And this one's already starting to get hard. But on the table, I have some tools that I use to make pottery. And this right here is one of my scraping tools. And this one is called a snuff can lid. Now, a lot of people don't dip snuff anymore. My grandmother, she dipped snuff for 91 years and she was perfectly healthy. But today we don't talk about the use of tobacco, but it is one of our sacred plants. And so our people still use tobacco in our ceremonies. We burn it, we pass it, we share it, we smoke it in our pipes. So tobacco is still very sacred in our tribal communities. But you know, early on, before the Europeans, Native Americans had pure tobacco, and it didn't have a lot of the poison in it that it has today. But now it has a lot of different chemicals in it. It has a lot of chemicals put on it as it's growing. But we still continue our traditional ways by using the tobacco. This is a snuff can lid. It's like got a really sharp edge on it. And I use it as one of my trimming tools. So I'll trim this bowl here until I get it nice and consistent and even to where I think it looks fine. And sometimes I've left my bowls crooked. I don't always leave them straight. Whenever I build pottery, they're always crooked until I straighten them out. That goes back to that same concept of the 4 directions and looking down on a piece of pottery and finding balance to shape your bowls. So I'll just keep trimming this until eventually I get it nice and smooth. You know, sometimes people always like to ask, well, how long does it take you to make a piece of pottery? And that's an interesting question to ask any artist about anything they do. Some pieces take 4 hours. Some pieces have taken me 4 months to finish it. So it kind of just depends on the piece and the design. And I have worked on some pottery where I make a bowl and I don't really know what I'm going to put on that bowl yet. So what I end up doing is I just sit it on the side on the shelf and I'll just look at that pot when I pass by it and I'll keep my eye on it and then I'll go back and look at it again. And then eventually, you know, the creator, he'll tell me what art belongs on that piece of pottery. So I don't always know exactly what design I'm going to put on my pottery. So this one right here, if you notice already, it's starting to get smoother already. So this is one that I built I think I built this about a month ago actually. And I had wrapped it up to keep it moist. And I'm just getting back around to it, but eventually it's going to be what we call a smudge bowl. And all these little shavings right here, I save all of these shavings. And these shavings become a slip. So just like the white clay is a slip, I take the red clay and make that into a slip as well. So on the table, I have some of my different tools that I use to make my pottery. And I have what we call stamping or texturing tools. This one right here is called a rope paddle. This right here is called a fishnet paddle. This is, take a guess on what this is. Now, everybody eats this, but a lot of people don't realize you can use this to make pottery. So this is a corn cob. So that's one corn cob, and this is another corn cob. And this right here is the corn. So inside the corn, after you eat all the corn off of it, you can use the corn body to make a texturing tool for your pottery. So this is actually yellow corn, and they make really great pottery tools. I use it, not only do I use it to make a texture on my pottery, but I also use it to roll around my pottery to help shape it. So the corn is used for lots of things. We also offer prayers with our corn. So whenever I make my pottery, I always pray over my pottery. I pray over the clay. I pray over my body, my hands, my health. I ask the Creator to be with me. So this one right here is a fishnet paddle. And what we do is we take this and we paddle it around the bowls to make these different textures. See that one? So we call that a fishnet paddle. It also looks like a waffle. I like to think of pottery as food sometimes. Since I'm going to cook inside of it, I might as well think about what I'm going to eat. So this one's called a rope paddle, like that. And then this one is a corn cob texture. So we take the corn cob and we roll it onto the clay, like that. So what I find so interesting about the corn cob, it actually looks like the corn is still in it. It's pretty sweet. So that's some of the texturing tools, and you'll find this on a lot of our ancient pottery, all the way up to present time today. And this is one of my trimming tools. And then I have, this is another lid from a mason jar lid that I use to scrape. And then I have one of my more contemporary tools. It's called a stylus. And this is what I use to create and draw. Almost all of my designs are done with this little bitty tool right here. Now I'm going to show you some of my designs and what they mean for me as a young girl and for my people, and hopefully in our future. You know, we really need to take care of the earth. We need to take care of Mother Earth. She gives us all of our food. She gives us water. And when we think about the animals and our responsibility to them, you know, they give us life, so we need to give them life. They feed us. They feed our children. They feed our people. Now, if you notice on the table, I have lots of turtles. And this is one of my turtles. And this one is called Songbirds. It has birds and it has berries and it has flowers. And our people would say that they would follow the birds, and the birds would teach them which plants that they could eat. And so by following the animals, our people said we can eat that, because if the birds are eating it, we can eat it also. And so that's one of the things where if you're paying attention, you'll notice that the birds are very important. They also bring us music and songs and dance. Our songs and our dances that we do represent the birds. This is another turtle that I made. This one's called Grandmother Moon. And this one has the cedar tree for prayers and blessings. It has the moon, which is what we call Sakima, means Grandmother Moon. It has the stars, which give us direction in life. And so we always say our prayers with the cedar tree. And whenever we travel, we take a piece of the cedar branch with us. This one is a deer pot. And this one is made with white clay, actually. And then I painted it with the red clay. And so these little shavings that I talked about earlier is what I use to make a paint to paint on top of this bowl. And this one came to me in a dream. So a lot of my ideas and my designs come to me as I'm sleeping. And so I saw the deers running in my dream, and then this swirl started growing in the backs. And so the creator said, this is the spirit of the deer. But I call this one the great hunter, and this is in honor of our men, because our men are basically our hunters. Now, women hunt too. I had an aunt who was known to be one of the greatest hunters around. But the deer provides us with clothing, food, tools, what we wear on our heads called a peshaw. We make rugs out of the skins. My grandfather, he would make a glue out of the deer antler. And so we make awls and knives out of the deer antler. So he's a very important creature. And on the top, I have the deer tracks. And then underneath the deer is the bow and arrow. And if you're a young boy, you have to know how to follow the deer. You have to know how to follow his tracks. And you also have to learn to make your own bow and arrow. So this is all in honor of our men and the things that they do for our family. This one is another one that I dreamed about. This is called a dream catcher turtle. And I do lots of turtles. The turtle is a symbol of long life, longevity, fertility, protection, friendship. And this one is called Blackberry Winter. And this design came from some of our women when we were making pottery. They began to talk about the moon of May. And so when May comes around, it's a very chilling moon. So it gets really cold, even though it's not wintertime. And so it tells us that the blackberries are going to bloom really thick and that the bear is going to come out from his hiding place looking for food. So on this design, I have the bear paws. I also have a turquoise bear and feathers. And then right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 5 dots representing the 5 moons of May. And so that's a sign. Like I said, we use signs to teach us how to live our lives. But the dream catcher itself is to protect our dreams. So while we're sleeping, we have good dreams and bad dreams. And we're told that our good dreams come off the feathers into your life, and the bad dreams get caught in the web and vanish by morning. Now, I call this piece traditional and contemporary. And the reason why is because the old dream catchers, the very first ones, were not this fancy. They did not have all these beads in here. They would only have one bead to represent that one bad dream that tried to come in. But they always have feathers, the traditional ones. So that one's both traditional and contemporary in the sense of combining the two worlds together. This one is a bear. He is called my brother's spirit, and he is in honor of the bear, of course. Well, all the plants on his back are called medicine plants. My mother would always tell me about how our people could talk to the animals. And the bear would tell them that these are medicine plants. This is where you go for your medicine. And right here on his feet is called bear grass. And the bear grass is a very strong plant that we have. And the bear grass is used to weave rope and also to weave baskets. And there's a strong string that comes out of the long stalk of the plant that's very strong. It has the turtles. It has birds. It has the deer tracks. It has the wolf paws. It has the bear. And then it has the dogwood flower on the top. And all of these are called medicine plants. It has the grapes, the berries, the oak leaves, maple leaves, all types of plants are on this bear. And he is called my brother's spirit because he's the strong creature in the tribe. So he's holding his people on his back. So when we think about our people, we're speaking of them as if they are animals. So it's like the bear clan, the bird clan, the snipe clan. All of those animals are part of we call our family people. This is a big pot. This one took a long time to make this one. They're all hand coiled too, so I don't throw on the wheels. A lot of potters throw on the wheels where they roll it around and around, but I don't throw on the wheels. I hand build all of my work using a traditional coiling technique, where the pot I showed you earlier is a pinch pot. This one is coiled with big long coils that go around and around and around, and I stack them up, and then I just use my hands to smooth it out. and then I trim it and make it smoother and smoother and smoother. And this one's called the gift. So all of the designs on here represent the gifts of life. We have lots of gifts, and you see it has a turtle. The turtle is the first gift. It's the gift of fertility. It's the gift of a long life, to live a long time. And our people give the turtle as a wedding present to wish for the newlywed couple to have a long life together and be blessed with many, many children, because the turtle can lay up to 200 eggs. It also has the corn design going around the top. The corn is called the staff of life. It has a tobacco design, which is right here. And the tobacco is our medicine plant. Then at the top of it, it has a design called the beaver's tail. So this is in honor of the beaver, because the beaver, wherever he's at, there's lots of water and lots of fish. So that's in honor of the beaver. So this one's all about the gifts of life, the gift of Mother Earth, the gift of springtime, new beginnings, which is the dogwood flower. And so as soon as the dogwood flower blooms, it teaches us that it's time to start tilling the land and beginning to plant the corn and our food for the coming up season. This one is a corn woman, and she is part of the three sisters. Some of you may have heard of the corn, squash, and beans. You may have heard of succotash, which is a food that our people eat. Well, our people, when the Europeans came over, we taught them how to live. We taught them how to survive in this country that they live in. So we would teach them about the corn, squash, and beans. And so she's one of the three sisters. Of course, her body is the corn. She's a corn sculpture. And this one's made out of all white clay. And her body is the corn, and her hair represents her hair, but it also represents the corn shucks, because our people braid our shucks together to preserve them and hang them in the pack houses. But she is one of the three sisters, and our story is that these three girls gave their life so that the people would always have food to eat. Our people always needed corn, squash, and beans, and we're told that these three foods give you all the nourishment that you need, all the vitamins, all the protein, everything that you need comes in the corn, squash, and beans. Well, these three girls wanted to do something to help their people, because their people were very hungry and starving, and they didn't have any food. And so they prayed and asked the Creator. They said, Creator, what can we do to help our people? Our elders are dying and our children are very sick. And so our land has become very dry, and we don't have any water. So what are we going to do to feed our people? And so the three girls went into the woods and prayed to the Creator, and the Creator came down and he told them, he said, in order to help your people, you have to give of yourself. And so the three girls pondered on it and wondered, what are they going to do to give of themselves? And so the Creator said, lie on the ground. And he said, I will turn you into the corn, into the beans, and into the squash. And he said, and as you lie on the ground, I'm going to send a mighty rain and thunder, and your plants are going to begin to grow. And so when the three sisters lied on the earth, one of the elders in the village began to wonder. He said, where are the three sisters? And so somebody had said they saw them going into the woods. And so the Creator, the elders had gone into the woods to talk to the Creator. And when the elders went into the woods, they saw these three plants. And so the Creator said, take these three plants back to your people. He said, teach them to put them in the earth and to plant them. He said, and they will always take care of their seeds every year. I will never let them go hungry again. So our people always say that if we take care of the corn, the squash, and the beans, we will never go hungry again. So that's a lesson. In many different ways, it's a lesson about preserving and saving your seeds, but it's also a lesson about sacrificing yourself for others, and also to think about them before you think about yourself. And we can always do something to make a difference. We can also always do something to make change. And so these three sisters were considered very, very special, and they still are even today. We have special ceremonies that are held just for those three sisters. Um, I want to say too that this is Indian Heritage Month, And this month we are celebrating the indigenous people of the United States. There's more than 500 nations across the United States, and many of those nations have other tribal nations within themselves. And so we're celebrating in North Carolina. They declared on this Indian Heritage Month, and the first time was in 2000. And now we're continuing this tradition for now 21 years. And, hey, what's better than to honor the indigenous people, the First Nations people, the first people of this land, this country that we all live on? So happy Indian Heritage Month, first of all, and then happy Thanksgiving. I remember when I was a little girl and I came home from school one year, and I had this picture that we had, coloring book picture that we had painted in class. And it was like a pilgrim was passing the Indian people some food. And when I got home and I ran to the house and I told my mother I was so excited to show her about this picture I had colored, she said, "They didn't give us any food. We gave them food. We taught them how to eat. We taught them how to plant." And so I think right now in today's world, we need to think about reversing our thinking about Thanksgiving. Think about, who's the hero? Who is the real hero here? We often think the pilgrims are the heroes and they saved the world and they invited the Indians. But we have some real tragic stories about that Thanksgiving Day. So I want you to just rethink um, what you think about Thanksgiving and reteach it in a whole new way so that we can really honor the indigenous people of today. So do I have any questions?
Thank you so much, Senora, for sharing all that with us today. And we do have some questions for you. People want to know how long it takes for you to make one of the turtles that are on the table there, the smaller ones.
Well, I usually make my turtle in batches. So I'll make about 5, maybe 7 sometimes. And I'll make all the turtles first. And then I will set them aside and let them dry, then trim them. Then the next day paint them, and the next day design them. So if I could put one in a day, it takes about 4 hours. But just to make the turtle structure itself only takes a few minutes. So it doesn't take very long to actually create a turtle.
Excellent, excellent. And people want to know if there are examples of the type of pottery your grandfather did anywhere for them to see.
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Um, we don't have too many of our old pots. We do have some ancient historical pots that represent thousands of years of pottery that my ancestors made. My grandfather was not a potter himself, but what he did was he showed me the old pots from my elders. But what he did tell me too, that he told me my grandmother did make clay pipes, and she had a clay pipe that she smoked herself. Unfortunately, I do not have that pipe, and I have never seen that piece of pottery. So just knowing and talking with him historically on that day, it just kind of put a spirit inside of me when I heard him talk about our old ways and that's how the pottery was made. And so, that was a very exciting day for me. I think that turned my brain into thinking about making pottery.
People are interested to know if you give lessons on pottery making.
That's a good question too. I used to, before the pandemic, I always give classes at home. We have a cultural program where we have about 72 kids that come out every Tuesday night. And I always do one pottery session there per year. I teach as I go into the different schools. I teach pottery, so I teach a lot of things in the schools. I do not have a space right now. Pray for me. I need a space. I need a gallery. I want and dream of having a gallery. I dream of having a place where I can make my work, display my work, and teach. So I want to teach. I want to get back into teaching. When I was a young girl and I started doing pottery, just a few years afterwards, I actually became the teacher of teaching pottery. And so I want to get back into teaching again because I really enjoy it and love teaching.
What do you hope people take away from your pottery?
Well, I hope that they know that we are here. Our tribe has existed for hundreds of years, and we have fought hard to maintain our traditions. I hope that they see the Creator has given me a gift. I hope they take away that whatever their eyes behold. I hope their eyes behold my spirit, because when I do my pottery, I put a part of my spirit into my art.
It's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And I think people can take this pottery into their homes, into their lives, and
Yes.
experience that as well and add their own meaning to that.
I do sell my pottery. I sell it usually at the North Carolina States Fair. I go around to different craft shows and I sell my pottery. I sell it at home at our American Indian powwow. So you can contact me through the Museum of History in case you're interested in learning more about my art. I also do a lot of Artists in the Schools program where I bring a display of my art. We talk about history. I have a really great interaction with the students where they can ask me questions. They can share what they're learning about American Indians. They can teach me what they're learning through their history books. And then I just talk about our tribe and our traditions and how we pass this down to our kids. We have a great time, and the kids make something out of clay. Usually we make a turtle.
That's terrific. I think that's all we have time for. I am so grateful to you for joining us today. And I want to remind everybody that the American Indian Heritage Celebration Education Day continues throughout the day with our live performances of music and dancing. You can sign up for that and watch anytime up to 3:30 today. You can go on our website to find that. And again, tomorrow, the American Indian Heritage Celebration, the 26th year of the celebration, continues with virtual presentations throughout the day. You can sign up for those on our website, and we're very, very